relationship between the United Arab Emirates and the United States is key, not just for both countries, but for the region as a whole. And it encompasses areas such as security, diplomacy, technology. All of these dynamic factors are at play at Idex, the defense exhibition currently going on in Abu Dhabi. You're listening to the Business Extra podcast. I'm Mustafa Alrawi, the National's Assistant Editor-in-Chief. With me is my co-host, Kelsey Warner. Hi, Kelsey.
Hey, Mustafa.
So as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Americans are, includes you, a very important part of the UAE's outreach to the world in many, many different aspects. We have the Idex Defense Exhibition going on this week, as we may have mentioned, and we're doing a lot of coverage on it, the nationalnews.com, of course. And the US delegation has a presence. There are a number of American companies. You were down there at Idex. Did you feel and see this presence?
Yes. Hello. Yeah, reporting live from my first in-person event in nearly a year here at Idex. Absolutely. I mean, from the Lockheed Martin stand to Boeing to Raytheon, there's dozens of U.S. companies here representing, major multinationals with huge footprints in, aircraft, drones, unmanned vehicles, armor, munitions, you name it, they've got it. And the U.S. certainly has one of the biggest presence here alongside, China, Russia are the top three among a show that really, though, I have to say, is emphasizing this year local contracts, local deals, localization of talent and production.
So to get a little bit more insight into the ties between the US and the UAE, particularly with regards to Idex, defense, security. We spoke to Sean Murphy, the Charge d'Affaires at the US Embassy in Abu Dhabi. Let's listen to that now. As the Charge d'Affaires at the American Embassy in Abu Dhabi, Sean, you're at the nexus of where diplomacy, trade, and knowledge transfer meet. This event in Abu Dhabi, it's a big one. It's normally a big one, but perhaps has even more significance amid the pandemic. Can you tell me what the build-up for you has been like ahead of Idex?
Idex is an extremely it's really the only world-class defense exhibit and conference in the Middle East and North Africa, and in that sense, it is a tremendous opportunity for the United States to be here and to build and strengthen relationships with governments, businesses, and armed forces throughout the region. So we are very much appreciative of the efforts that the Emirati government has made this year in organizing this event in the truly exceptional circumstances of COVID. We're pleased with to have a good number of American companies with us this year. In the embassy, we have a terrific commercial office, and we have a terrific defense office. And those are the partners that have been working most closely with the American business community. And I've spent the day here going around and talking to the U.S. Businesses, thanking them for their presence here, and learning about their programs and their activities here in the UAE. So it's really been quite an interesting day.
Sean, Saudi Arabia is the largest recipient of U.S. defense exports, followed by Australia, then Japan, and then the UAE in fourth. Just to emphasize to listeners how important this region is for the U.S. in terms of its defense industry. But more recently, the last few years, the GCC states have really emphasized localization of talent, of production. I'm curious from your perspective, what role does the U.S. have to play in that push?
Well, the reality is that trade between the U.S. and the UAE has grown dramatically over the years. Between the two countries in 2019 was over $24 billion, with U.S. exports to the UAE totaling some $20 billion. The UAE is one of the largest destinations for U.S. foreign military sales, and it's a very, very important relationship. And Idex, as I said, is really a tremendous venue for us to build on the solid foundation that we already have in this relationship. It's a relationship that goes beyond trade and commerce, and it embraces humanitarian and security operations, and has even taken us into outer space, as we've seen most recently with the Emirati Hope probe that's currently in orbit around Mars. And that's the relationship between our two space organizations is very important to us. So this trade relationship is very important, but it's just one component of a strategic partnership and a friendship that really goes back to the very founding of this country some 50 years ago.
Sean, those points that you raise about the relationship between the UAE and US are really interesting, because when we think about defense at the moment, the kind of elephant in the room, if you like, is the big above the water deals, like, for example, the discussion over the F-35 high-tech jets that's going on at the moment, both in Washington and elsewhere. But from your point of view, as being sort of in the nexus of where defense and diplomacy and humanitarian discussions meet, I mean, is it about these big sort of headline-grabbing deals? Is that what success looks like, or is there a different metric?
Well, as you correctly say, certain sales grab a lot of headlines, but the relationship between the two countries is much deeper than any particular arms agreement. It's a relationship that is based on values and interests. It's a relationship that has continued since the very founding of this country. And it's a relationship that has transcended partisan political moments in the United States. In other words, it's a relationship that has continued and deepened, whether there's been a Democratic administration or a Republican administration. So we're very confident that this is a relationship that is on solid ground, and very confident that it's a relationship that is going to continue on its very positive trajectory into the future.
To your point on this nonpartisan relationship, the Biden administration is, of course, reviewing all of the arms deals executed on by the Trump administration. Do you have any visibility on timing of when we might know the status of, as Mustafa mentioned, the F-35s or the Reaper drones?
Well, what I can tell you is that we are moving forward with proposed arms sales to the UAE, even as we conduct the review that you mentioned. This kind of a review of the details is very typical during a transition of U.S. Presidential administrations. And as plans for the sales progress, we are going to continue to work with the UAE to ensure that our technology is protected and that any defense transfers meet our strategic objectives of building stronger, more capable, and more interoperable security partners. And we are very confident that we have a tremendous partner in the UAE. So this is, as I said, a particular sale is only one aspect of a relationship that is very firmly established, that goes back to the very founding of this country.
Sean, to sort of bring it back around to diplomacy, if you like, in your position, and I know you know the region well, not just the UAE but elsewhere. Do you find that when it comes to, for example, these objectives around technology or knowledge transfer, or any not just defense, but in all areas, that it sort of added a nuance to diplomacy to the areas that you have to perhaps wear a hat in and understand that maybe a few years ago wasn't so pertinent to your job. But it seems you have to be a kind of expert in trends, as well as just being the diplomat and the diplomatic position that you're in.
Well, our relationship is a very important part of the world to the United States, and as an embassy, there are few things that we do that are more important than working on security issues and in supporting U.S. business. As I mentioned, we're pleased that there's a good number of U.S. companies here at Idex. It's been very interesting today talking with them and seeing the range of activities that they're involved with in the UAE, helping the UAE address its legitimate security concerns. And this is the nature of diplomacy in this part of the world, and we really feel that we have a tremendous partner in the UAE in working together for the peace and security of the region.
I'm curious, this year marks a step change. Abraham Accord, the normalization pact between the UAE, Bahrain, and Israel last year. Does this change at all the feel of Idex this year from your perspective?
Of course, this whole year with the COVID pandemic is really been quite exceptional, and we're very impressed with the efforts that the Emirati government has made to both logistically and in terms of public health to conduct this event in a way that is safe for all the participants. As you mentioned, the Abraham Accords really are a very important aspect of the political, diplomatic, and security environment in the region right now. And this is an area that the Emirati government has really once again demonstrated its regional leadership. We are very pleased to have been part of the normalization process with Israel, to be a partner with the UAE and Israel on the Abraham Accords, and it's something that we remain very committed to, and it's a very important aspect of a tremendous strategic partnership that the United States and the UAE have been able to establish over many decades.
That was Sean Murphy, the Charge d'Affaires at the US Embassy in Abu Dhabi. Kelsey Warner, thank you so much.
Good to be here.
If you enjoyed this show, please do subscribe or leave a review. All that remains is to thank our production team, Arthur Edison and Aisha Khan, and you all for listening. Do join us again next time.